All right, well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you all in this Water Innovation Virtual Forum. As you'll note at the bottom of the initial slide here, I work in the Office of Policy Planning and Evaluation, which is a headquarters office in NOAA's research arm. And one of the interesting things about working in the research side of NOAA is that we tend to look at ourselves as technological innovators. And so this sort of virtual conference is something that we're really always looking for the opportunity to participate in. We're going to be talking over the next 45 minutes or so about watershed issues. And in particular, myself and my two colleagues who will be joining me are going to be looking at technologies, method, interests, and for those of us on the federal side, mandates in things like flood control, runoff, stormwater management, and obviously stuff that goes along with that, such as nutrient control, water quality, and I've added a couple of pieces about watershed impacts downstream and even restoration within watersheds and within coastal zones, since of course NOAA and the Army Corps of Engineers do an awful lot of work in all of those areas. I'm very pleased to be joined today by two really interesting folks whose talks I'm very much looking forward to hearing, and I hope all of you will be looking forward to them as well. First, after my remarks, Dr. Sujay Kaushal, and I apologize for murdering that last name, from the Department of Geology and the Earth System Science Interdisciplinary Center at the University of Maryland, will provide us with some academic insights into watershed activities. And he'll be followed by Dr. Carrie Talbot, who is currently serving as the Associate Technical Director for Flood and Coastal Storm Damage Reduction at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Research and Development Center in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So a lot of people, when they think of NOAA, think, of course, of our activities in weather forecasting, but may not be able to draw the line between those things and watersheds. And so what I'm going to do over the next 12 or 13 minutes is sort of step you through at a very high level the types of activities that NOAA does and the types of technologies that we bring to the table in watershed arenas, both in terms of general water forecasting, in terms of our relationship to various flood activities, including flood safety and flood zone education and extension, and then finally close out with a little bit of discussion about NOAA's intersections with runoff control and pollution mitigation through our responsibilities under the Coastal Zone Management Act. To begin with, NOAA does a lot of work forecasting how water moves and where water is going to be through its river forecast centers in the National Weather Service. The map that you see here documents how we split up watersheds in the United States into a series of areas where we have the responsibility for producing water forecasts. As you might imagine, this forecasting activity is an integrating one for NOAA. We don't take most of the data ourselves that is involved in the forecast prepared by these various forecast centers. We rely very heavily on our partners at the U.S. Geological Survey, at the National Park Service, the Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Land Management, and we also take data from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a variety of water councils and water consortia that are regional and state entities. And of course, we take as much information as we can from our state and local management partners to produce the kind of products that come into us from the river forecast centers. All of the activity and information that's conducted by these river forecast centers is accessible on the web. Most of it is in real time or near real time. And for those of you that are interested in that web portal, it's very simple to remember. It's just weather.gov, and that'll take you to everything that the National Weather Service does. And then you can drill down to the river forecast centers as well as a number of the other Weather Service entities that I'll be describing today. So what does a river forecast product look like? What are the kinds of things that a river forecast center might produce? Well, this is a snapshot from the Lower Mississippi River Forecast Center, which is housed in Slidell, Louisiana, of a data product, a visualization product that they actually had on their website yesterday. And it looks at the likelihood of flood over designated flood stage in a variety of river basins throughout the lower Mississippi River watershed. And each one of those little squares represents a specific station where either NOAA or USGS or the Corps of Engineers or some other partner that we work with is able to provide us with river flow data or with some other type of information from which we can draw this forecast together. And as you can see, as of yesterday in the lower Mississippi River watershed, there's really no flood anticipated, which of course goes very much along with the weather forecast that we have in those areas. Another thing that NOAA is involved with, both through the River Forecast Centers and through our work with NIDIS and our partners with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is drought monitoring and drought forecasting in the United States. This is a recent drought forecast that was prepared by the USDA involving the work of NOAA scientists and available both through NOAA websites as well as USDA websites. And NOAA has been working over the last several years to provide drought forecast information so that not only can agricultural sectors make decisions about what to plant, when to plant, how to adjust their harvest seasons, but also so that water managers throughout the United States can work with the water supplies that they have to make sure that they meet the variety of needs that we've heard talked about over the last couple of hours in terms of providing water in a variety of ways to a variety of customers. NOAA, of course, does a lot of flood prediction, and this is an area in which we do a lot of internal to NOAA ensemble sort of activities through our River Forecast Centers, the National Severe Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, which happens to sit in the same building as the National Severe Storms Lab in Norman, Oklahoma. Our National Center for Environmental Prediction, which is also a Weather Service center, which is housed in College Park, provides a lot of modeling capacity and a lot of data visualization activities. And as many of you may be aware, NOAA, just in the last several months, has rolled out the first national water model under the auspices of our new National Water Center in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. All of this information is provided 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to our local weather forecast offices, who then go on to develop localized forecast products. And they are the ones who issue the watches and warnings for floods that so many of us have come to know and rely upon for making decisions about not only our personal daily activities, but also for things like school openings, school closures, road closures, and other sorts of emergency management decisions. The various entities that you see above also participate in flood safety education. This is an activity that the National Weather Service takes the lead on for us, and you can see the floodsafety.noaa.gov URL there at the bottom of the slide. It's a great place to go if you're looking for information for school projects, for homeowners association meetings, for all types of activities that you might be undertaking, to really look at how flood safety can be expanded and flood safety can be ensured through the products that NOAA provides. There are also, again, links there to a number of our federal partners, particularly to the Corps of Engineers, which has, as many of you know, a very strong flood damage reduction emphasis as part of its programming. Furthermore, NOAA has recently gotten into flood visualization projects. And again, this is an area where NOAA is taking a lot of data and information from a variety of sources, including FEMA, the Corps, state and local emergency management planners, and our own in-house geodesy capabilities to produce web-enabled and web-accessible flood visualization maps throughout the entire United States. This is actually a part of the National Ocean Service's Digital Coast Initiative. And so if you Google NOAA, NOS, Digital Coast, you'll get to the website that can take you to this coastal flood exposure mapper, which really looks at all sorts of flood hazards, not just in the coastline, but really around the United States and through the major watersheds. We do flood damage assessment after major flooding activities have been done. This is a snapshot of a photograph that was taken by NOAA Flood Damage Assessment Survey crews in Ascension Parish, Louisiana, following the flooding of the Amite River in the August 2016 flood event that I think most folks are familiar with. And NOAA, through its geodesy capabilities, again, takes a look at aerial photographs like this, compares them to aerial photography that was done at the same altitude in pre-flood conditions, and can then assist FEMA, state and local responders, National Guard, whoever asks for it, with assessments of the extent of flooding and therefore assessments of the extent of activities that need to be made in response to all of this flood activity, as well as providing guidance going forward to communities, to counties, to parishes, and to states as to how they might engage in flood damage reduction activities, particularly when they're working with other federal agencies. I mentioned that NOAA has some work in pollution control and pollution reduction as a result of its Coastal Zone Management Act authorities. And this is, again, one of those areas where NOAA is taking a leadership role, but partnering very strongly with other federal agencies and partnering particularly with state agencies and coastal communities around the United States. For those of you that are not aware of it, the Coastal Zone Management Act requires NOAA to develop national guidelines on a variety of coastal zone management activities and then ensure that each state in the coastal zone, including along the Great Lakes, is focused on implementing those guidelines in ways that make sense at the actual state level. So, for instance, Coastal Zone Management Act compliance in the state of Florida is not going to mimic necessarily Coastal Zone Management Act compliance in the state of Washington, and it's certainly not going to mimic Coastal Zone Management Act compliance in Hawaii. Yet NOAA has the responsibility through the National Ocean Service to ensure that all 50 states and all of the states, particularly in the coastal zone, including the Great Lakes, are complying with the federal mandate in a way that makes sense. In 1990, the CZMA was amended to include a focus on coastal non-point pollution control. This focuses particularly on the economic sectors of agriculture, forestry, generalized urban areas, and specifically stormwater runoff from urban areas, marinas, what we in NOAA call hydromodification, which is shoreline and stream channel modification, which is primarily from a regulatory standpoint, the purview of the Corps of Engineers, wetlands, which we take a lot of responsibility for from a restoration standpoint in NOAA, and then various other riparian and vegetated treatment systems. As I noted earlier, NOAA is providing guidance. NOAA is serving a gateway function. NOAA is integrating data and providing that to the states through a number of different venues. And we're basically trying to make sure that individual states are implementing non-point pollution control to deal with coastal zone runoff issues through the implementation of their activities under the Coastal Zone Management Act. One of the ways in which we provide that guidance and outreach is through the National Sea Grant College Program. For those of you that may not be familiar with Sea Grant, it is a collaborative activity which is actually housed in NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, where I sit. Sea Grant is statutorily authorized by Congress and performs an extension and education mission very similar to the land grant extension education missions that many of you may be familiar with, that's sponsored primarily by USDA. There are Sea Grant extension agents in all of the coastal states, and one of the many things they do is help deliver NOAA's various data development tools and actions out into coastal communities, out to state planning authorities, and out to others who are working on watershed management issues. Finally, NOAA has recently been working through various data visualization channels on trying to provide some information on land source runoff prediction. And this is a snapshot of one of the many products that is available out there that is simply trying to provide a gauge in millimeters per month of how much runoff there might be from land in a given area. As you might imagine, this is also an integrative function that takes in our various watershed management authority activities. It takes in our precipitation records, and again, it takes in data from many of our federal, state, and local partners to provide a data product to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and to the agricultural community, as well as the Natural Resources Conservation Service, to give them information about where runoff is occurring, how much runoff occurs at a given time of the year, and therefore allow them to make better informed decisions about how they might alter that runoff and really kind of combat the challenges in watersheds that runoff creates.